All right, all. We're going to call this meeting to order. This is the Town of Kensington Town Council meeting, December 14th at 7 p.m. So we're ready to start. We'll have a moment of silence to start the meeting. Does anyone have anybody they would like us to keep in our thoughts and prayers? So we could keep health workers as they are manning the hospital and the COVID and getting the vaccines. So we'll keep healthcare workers in our thoughts and prayers. Anyone else? Okay, if we can bow our heads for a moment of silence. Okay, thank you very much. All right, we'll move to the approval of the minutes. I believe Matt sent out the minutes, and then Nate, you asked for a correction or an addition. And so I think everyone saw that. And so I need a, is there anything else, or we just need a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the minutes from the November council meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Bridget? Okay. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, staff. All right, we'll move down to from the mayor and the town council. Number one is the 3906, 3910 Knowles Avenue, Knowles Manor Senior Housing. Darren, I believe you're going to be addressing this issue.
Tracy, I'm going to sign off.
Yes, thank you.
As stated in other meetings, I'll recuse myself from the discussion of Knowles Manor. I'll
Great.
come back on the next agenda item. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Nate.
Well, and so there are, this has sort of become two separate issues. And I don't know if Connor, do you want to first address the resolution that we've been considering for months now, and then I'll address sort of a newer issue?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. So you're talking about resolution R-07-2020, which was a resolution brought forward to the council by the Neighbors for an Improved Kensington, their settlement agreement with this developer. And the resolution is asking that the town accept a $100,000 contribution from Knowles Manor Senior Living LLC. And at our last meeting, we had representatives from the Neighbors for Improved Kensington on, and we decided that Mayor Tracy and myself would act as representatives from the town, and we would reach out to two representatives from the Neighbors for Improved Kensington. That is Al Carr and Jill McCrory. We sent some emails trying to schedule, and Jill McCrory, on behalf of the Neighbors for Improved Kensington, did get back to us, and she's asked that this resolution just be taken off the table, that we just remove it for now, that the Neighbors for Improved Kensington would like to just take a break. They believe that the issue has just become a little bit too emotionally charged. They'd like to take a little more time to allow this issue kind of cool down a little bit. And as well, she would like some more time for the Neighbors for Improved Kensington to review the project and to consider how or what or other areas where that contribution could be used, as opposed to only what it was asked for in the settlement agreement. So, you know, in my conversation with Jill a couple of days ago, I told her I'd report out to that effect and then bring it to the council. Her request that we just, you know, remove the issue and reintroduce it later at another time. When, so really what it will be is the ball will go back into the Neighbors for an Improved Kensington's lap. And when they're ready to, you know, take it up again, and they would like to discuss it with the council, that they would come to the mayor at that time and ask that it be reintroduced.
So we will consider this just a continued indefinitely, and it'll come back up when they're ready. Is that correct?
Yes, and so I don't know if anything needs to be done since it's already on a continuance. It had been continued from the last meeting, so I guess we could just let that continuance go, and then at such time that either Al or Jill as representatives for the Neighbors for Improved Kensington, when their group is ready to, bring it up and discuss it again, then they would bring it forward to you as the mayor to put back onto an agenda.
Okay. Bridget, do you have any questions about this? No?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Darren? Do you
All
want
right,
to do the
so-
second part?
Sure. So this Thursday, the planning board is considering the site plan amendment that would allow moving the lay-by lane from its position that was connected to the driveway to centering it on the building. This is something that the planning staff came up with at the last minute, like within 30 days of the final approval of the project. The developer at the time asked that change not be incorporated into the agreement because it was brought up at the last minute and there would be a lot of delay. As a result of the lawsuit filed by some Kensington residents and nearby residents, the developer agreed to center the lay-by lane like planning staff had wanted. And this was done, I believe it was done by a technical amendment, but it has to go back to the planning board for approval. When I was reviewing and discussing with planning staff this issue, I learned that the planning staff was unaware of some of the operational undertakings that the developer had agreed to also as part of the settlement. They had not been provided with the settlement terms. And so, for example, they were unaware that the developer had agreed that any deliveries made through the front door from cars illegally parked in the lay-by lane would be refused. And so I sent them a copy of the settlement agreement about 3 weeks ago. I expressed my concern, and I've shared that with the council, that the result of centering the lay-by lane, separating it from the driveway, and refusing deliveries through the front door would result in sending cars around the block to down Connecticut, to Warner, to Dietrich, and back up onto Knowles. It would increase traffic on Knowles as a result of that circuitous route, or it would result in what I view as unsafe and illegal U-turns for a delivery person to get back to the driveway. So I asked the group to reconsider the operational requirement that deliveries, that the developer push State Highway 4, no parking in the lay-by lane, and for deliveries to be refused through the front door. They declined to make any change. This item is on the planning board agenda for and the council agenda and put it in session. My feeling is that this entire process of the lawsuit and the settlement has featured far too much opaqueness and secrecy. And I think that rather than having it finally be approved as a consent item, I think it should be discussed openly and publicly by the planning board.
You're not asking them to change the lay-by lane, though, location at this time, is that correct?
That's correct. And I will tell the developer this, that I'm not going to ask them to to put it back where it was. I would suggest that we ask them for two things. For the first, for the planning board to support short-term limited parking in that lay-by lane. That's the entire purpose of it. It's to get traffic, to keep it from parking in the middle of travel lanes. And then the other thing I would like them to support is a change to the petition for review process, so that when you file a petition for review of a planning board decision, you have to state your reasons. You have to state the basis for your claim. You can't just file a perfunctory "we appeal" statement, and then for the next 4 months, decline to substantiate your claim. So the second's not really related to the substance of the project, but the first very much is.
Okay. Well, I mean, I know when we first met with the developer, the lay-by-lane was brought up, I believe by us, mainly because of the situation on the 10400 building, which people were upset about because cars park on Connecticut Avenue to, because there is nowhere else, to unload, you know, packages and such. Now, a lot of the UPS and FedEx, if they're, you know, dropping off, you know, major amount and mail will go into the garage, but as it's been pointed out, it's, you know, the Grubhub guy and the Uber people, and, you know, they're not going to go into the garage, or even Amazon, who's in a private car. So that was the whole purpose, is to keep people from blocking a lane of Knowles Avenue. So, Bridget, did you want to add anything to that, or no? Okay, Connor, did you have any additional?
No, I just elevate support for Darren's position. On the DRB, as part of the DRB, as you alluded to, Mayor Furman, when we first considered this project, it being a mid-block project in the middle of Knowles, which we know to be, you know, a congested roadway, obviously, you know, we took up the same ideas that the community had the developer tried to aggregate with other properties nearby to create a larger project, but that also gave them access off of perhaps Warner or Connecticut or even Dietrich. And they tried, it did not work. They proceeded to develop the property that they are legally allowed to develop, and it's mid-block. And so what we asked for was the lay-by lane, and we were supportive of the lay-by lane. It was our request of the developer that they included in their concept and in their plan for just this very reason. We wanted a pull-off area, not for parking, not full-time, long-term parking. We wanted an area where Ubers and Lyfts, which at the time, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, was our primary concern. But as the pandemic has hit, it is Grubhub and Uber Eats and CVS deliveries and grocery deliveries, things that can be brought in the front door, left at their management office, and the person can be gone in a matter of minutes. But that the people are not contracted with the building. They're not going to know to go down the ramp, that there's going to be a loading or unloading area that they might be able to access. And so I'm highly supportive of it in the fact, and I've expressed this to the Neighbors for Improved Kensington, that was always our vision. That was part of that public process that we talked about with the DRB meetings, that the lay-by lane was always designed with the idea that it would permit short-term stops, not parking, but short-term stops for deliveries to be made. By making it, no parking as an operational rule, my biggest concern are our residents that live on Warner and Freeman Place and Dietrich that are going to see increased traffic of people making a circle around the block. And that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario, which I think is unfathomable unless you watch some people drive around here, is that somebody might decide, oh, I'm being told I have to go into this underground parking garage. I'll just make a U-turn on Knowles Avenue. That is my biggest concern, for all of the reasons that everybody can imagine. So operationally, it was always the town's intent from at least the DRB's perspective, as we heard from residents about how to minimize the impact of traffic and delivery and the vehicle trips to this building, to include a lay-by lane and allow that lay-by lane for deliveries. And so it's my hope that the planning board, by taking it off the consent calendar and seeing the settlement agreements and then hearing our concerns and the rationale for why we asked for the lay-by lane, would realize that operationally it makes far more sense for that building to have the lay-by lane and allow short-term deliveries.
It's my understanding that the concierge at the building will not be there past 5 o'clock in order to get someone into the garage. Is that correct?
As I recall from the operational plans, they will have staff that will be there not 24 hours a day. And so what will happen is the people will come down, they'll either call from their car or they'll ring the buzzer box in the entryway for the resident. The resident will have to come down during the off hours and get that. No different than, you know, when food is delivered to my house, they'll either, you know, come and drop it in the doorway, or they'll call us and tell us that they're there.
But I'm saying a Grubhub person would not be able to access the garage after hours. Is that correct?
To my understanding, yes. So, you know, for a multitude of operational reasons. Now, again, UPS, FedEx, those contracted delivery drivers, the operational plan is that they will have access and they will be, you know, instructed on how to enter the garage, dropping parcels and mail all underneath there. That is the operational plan. It's all of these quote unquote gig economies that the intent is for them to just be able to come in, meet with the resident or at the front desk, drop their goods and be out of that lay-by lane in a matter of minutes.
Okay. So Darren, you're asking for support from the council to write a letter to planning, for me to write a letter on behalf of the town, asking them to take off the lay-by lane on the consent agenda so that we have an opportunity to speak to it, not for moving it, but for its use. Is that correct? The signage?
That's correct. And I don't think it requires a formal letter. I think it just requires an email to the planning board or planning staff, just to say, please move it from the consent to the discussed part of the agenda.
And you're planning on testifying on behalf of the town? Is that correct?
I'd be happy to, yeah.
Okay. All right.
I have a quick question. Will this delay everything?
It should
I
not
will
delay. I don't
specifically-
think it would delay.
Yeah,
What's
I'm going
that?
to ask that it not be delayed. I don't see any reason to delay their consideration of it. We're not asking for it to be put back to connected to the driveway. We're just asking that they, in the context of supporting this amendment, that they support, and we're not even telling State Highway what signage to put up. We're simply, because I don't know whether 5-minute parking, 15-minute parking, or deliveries only signage would be the most appropriate. We're just asking planning board to support our concerns about the combination of a lay-by with no parking with refused delivery.
There's a couple things in there.
Sorry?
There's a couple issues in there. So it's not just transparency, but there's also signage, movement, a few things more than just transparency of the process. That's a question.
Yes, I mean, it's absolutely, it's when you combine the three issues, I believe, you know, intended or unintended, that this, the combination of requirements presents problems or hazards.
Okay.
If the council doesn't have any more questions, I'll open it up to the public. Jack, I will call on you, but you have to tell me what's on your head. Did you have a little accident?
You have to unmute
You're
yourself.
muted, Jack. Unmute yourself.
I had a minor surgery this fall.
Okay,
A small growth removed.
okay, and you're doing okay then, good.
I'm doing fine. This is a pressure bandage to keep pressure on it so that it doesn't bleed.
Okay, good. I was concerned about you took a fall or something, so.
No,
Okay, did you have a
This was
question?
a-
Sorry, I changed the subject.
yeah,
back.
this was something you schedule it months in advance. Okay, I appreciate all the hard work that you're putting into this project and all. I just wanted to say, since you are revising the agreement, I would like to suggest that paragraph 4, monetary contribution, be changed to state that if the town council decides not to accept the $100,000, the money goes to Montgomery County to be used for traffic enforcement, not for a community center, which may not happen. That's not, the thing was intended for traffic enforcement. It should be used for traffic enforcement.
Okay, well, we'll take that under advisement when the group is ready to come back and meet with Connor and all. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Oops, you moved around. Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Furman. It really is a question related to these discussions with the Friends of Kensington, and to Councilmember Crimmins' comments a few moments ago. I was wondering if he could offer a little bit of clarity about these discussions, particularly in terms of allowing emotions to calm down. What exactly does that mean? And it was my understanding from the discussions that the council has had a couple of months ago, actually, that the issues were very clearly drawn, and the understanding was that this was not a really great idea for the town to accept this money. So what was the thinking in allowing emotions to calm down? Could you clarify that for me, please?
Sure. First, I don't really want to classify it as discussions. I had one quick phone call with Jill McCrory. We were working on scheduling to find a date and time where she and Al Carr, myself and Mayor Furman could sit down to have a conversation to start the discussions about, the settlement agreement and what the money might or might not be used for. And, the Neighbors for Improved Kensington were really ones, by the way of their settlement agreement, they wrote their agreement without consultation from the town, but in the monetary contribution part, they put it, they wrote it as such that the town is the recipient of it. And so what you are talking about is in, I think, the August and October meetings, we discussed the fact that we weren't party to these negotiations, we weren't party to the settlement, that, we would like to, if we're going to be asked to take this money and use it in some capacity, we'd like to have a discussion about where it goes, what it could be used for. That we thought, $100,000 solely for traffic enforcement was, that there were other ways to improve this project other than just traffic enforcement. So what I had a quick friendly call with Jill McCrory, just trying to work on some scheduling, and she made a very, polite request if we could just table it for a while. And her point was, in their discussions, meaning the Neighbors for an Improved Kensington, they went back to discuss, my guess, I don't know this, but what their position is, or where else it could be used, or how else it could be used. And in their discussions, came about the feeling that the last two council meetings where we had this discussion, August and October, November, felt rather heated. That members of the Neighbors for an Improved Kensington just felt that there was some antagonism, that there was emotions were running high around this issue. And so given that there is no immediate rush to use the money, she just politely requested if we could table the discussion around the use of the money until sometime off in 2021. Given that, my point to her was, our resolution is really a reaction to their request. If they are no longer want us to take up the request, then I would bring it back to this meeting that, it's their request that we take it up. We drew up a resolution to discuss it. They are no longer wanting to discuss it at this time. They'd like to bring it up at a later time. So we'll just continue this resolution until such time that the Neighbors for an Improved Kensington are ready to discuss it. At that time, Joe, is when, in my vision, as I expressed it to Jill, when they believe they're ready to discuss it, then Jill and Al, as their representatives, would contact Mayor Furman, and then Mayor Furman and myself, we would find a time, we would schedule, and we would start having those discussions. So we didn't get any more fruitive about how or where to use the money. It was merely just a conversation to talk about the fact that Neighbors for an Improved Kensington are, they need to get their feelings together around this, and they would like to allow some time to maybe let some emotions just cool off around this topic, and then revisit it in 2021.
Thank you. I just have a hard time understanding what they expect might change if emotions do calm down, I mean, the issues were pretty clearly addressed and stated and expressed at those two council meetings. And I just have a hard time understanding how things could change unless perhaps the makeup of the council could change. And maybe, is that what they have in mind, perhaps?
I can't speak on their behalf. I mean, really, all we did talk about was just a desire to kind of pull this resolution for now and revisit it at a later time.
Okay, thank you. After all, every year is an election year in Kensington.
Yes, it is. Okay, does anyone else in the audience have a comment they would like to make on this topic? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. Council, is there any, I don't know if we need a formal vote, but I am going to ask if everyone is okay with Darren reaching out to planning to take it off to the consent agenda and making his points. Anyone object to that? Are you for that or?
Yeah, you gave me a negative question instead of a positive question.
Sorry.
I will wait till you phrase the question.
Sorry. Are you for it, for Darren taking it off the consent agenda?
I'm in support, yes.
Okay. Bridget?
I'm not. I think it's become divisive. I think it's being prolonged and I want it over. So no.
Okay. Darren, I'm assuming you're for it. So.
Yes.
Okay. So we will go ahead and do that. Thank you. All right. So Nate, you can come back. And we'll move on to number 2. This is an update on the Thrive Montgomery 2050. It's a December 8th meeting that we had with Casey Anderson and Gwen Wright, the planning director and the planning chairman. And I believe it was Chevy Chase. Was it the town of Chevy Chase that ran the meeting? And both Connor and I attended it. It was about a 2-hour meeting. And it's the vision of Montgomery County in 2050. So Connor, would you like to highlight the meeting?
Sure. So this started, if you recall back a couple of months ago, we discussed how Thrive Montgomery 2050, which is to be the new kind of master plan for the whole county, which hasn't been updated since 1964, is under draft right now and it's being reviewed. And at that time, myself, Matt, Mayor Furman engaged with several other down county municipalities just because we hadn't had a lot of engagement with the planning department on Thrive 2050. We brought all of our ideas together. This was both incorporated towns as well as many unincorporated civic associations. I think it was 23 in total. Ended up drafting a letter to the planning board dated November 17th. That is quite detailed and lengthy. It's an 18-page letter. But to give it some perspective, Thrive 2050 is like a 250-page document. And it is, it's under review right now by planning board staff with the idea that in early 2021, they want to get it to the county council and look to have it adopted. And there's just a lot of areas where we had a lot of questions and concerns, and we highlighted those in that 18-page letter. The meeting on the 8th of December was in response to our letter. The planning board chair, Casey Anderson, the planning board staff director, Gwen Wright, and a couple of other staff members, in response to our letter, asked to be able to sit down and hear directly from this group. So a number of us, I don't know, 50 so people from 25, 30 different organizations met, and we discussed a number of our concerns. And the biggest thing I would take away is the county really focused a lot of their responses around 2 things in response to our promptings. Our promptings were that, one thing that we just didn't see identified strongly enough in this document was around an economic development. How is Thrive 2050 supporting economic development within the county? And what the county planning board chair Anderson worked to highlight, using specific examples from Amazon and Marriott and other large employers that have been looking at the county, talked about was that when they compared Montgomery County to other areas in the region, Fairfax County, DC, but then other like regions across the nation where we had or exceeded or beat out a number of these other jurisdictions on, the education of the workforce, diversity of the workforce, income, wages, all these positive attributes. One area that was of deep concern is housing. And what Thrive 2050 is really trying to address is the disparity of housing across the county. That talks to housing costs, the mix of housing, the availability of housing, the availability of affordable housing, the availability of housing in close proximity to metro and public transit. They also talked about mass transit and the need for a better transit solution for the county. And the planning board chair Anderson made a very clear point that what he found most striking in these discussions with large businesses was not once did they ask about our roadway infrastructures. They didn't care about the widening of 270 or the widening of 495. What they cared about were our rail, our bus rapid transit, the Purple Line, how to get a more integrated walkable community and bikeable community, that, the workplace of tomorrow really was a place that you could get to in what they call this 15 minutes of living, that you could bike, walk, or multimodal transport your way to and from work within 15 minutes. And we had other comments around it that we were trying to fill in some of those gaps. But it was very interesting to hear. Another discussion was around trying to find a vision for all of this, and that's what 2050 was about. We did talk about the fact that, zoning text amendments are oftentimes can be used as patchwork ways that the county council works to address certain issues. But, ZTA, zoning text amendments, oftentimes make municipalities very, very nervous because it usurps some of their control over these topics. Many of the municipalities don't have zoning control other than Gaithersburg.
Do you want to give it, Connor, do you want to give an example of ZTA 20-07 that Will Jawando introduced?
Right, so Councilmember Jawando just introduced a ZTA about 3 days before this meeting. And the concept behind it was to increase the missing middle housing. And specifically what it does is for areas within 1 mile radius of a metro station, that they can increase the density, they can increase infill development, it would reduce setbacks and other zoning controls that are currently afforded in the R60 area. And so the point is they want to, this ZTA would allow for a much higher level of density in areas within 1 mile of a metro. And so there are a number of communities around Silver Spring and Chevy Chase and Bethesda that are, caught a little off guard by this because this hasn't really been talked about before. And Thrive 2050 brought up this concept of missing middle housing, but the idea was to create a framework that then our sector plans and our master plans could build off of to create the kind of zoning that we want to see for our individual communities. And one of the deepest concerns is that it won't be done through master plans and sector plans, but rather through these zoning text amendments. And sure enough, within a day or two of this, right before this meeting, Councilmember Jawando had already introduced the first ZTA that kind of starts tackling these issues. So we wanted to get on the record to talk about our concerns around some of these initiatives, understanding that we need a better mix of housing. We need additional housing, especially affordable housing, that putting housing around metro really makes sense. For Kensington, obviously we're not within that 1 mile radius, but should the same vision be taken to rail and MARC, right? There's a lot of concepts out there about the fact that MARC and VRE maybe should be consolidated into one regional rail system and create a connected network, which would mean, MARC from Kensington connect all the way through to Northern Virginia. That's a very intriguing idea that I know a lot of people around here have talked about for a long time, but these are the kind of issues that we wanted to raise with Thrive 2050. The other thing that planning board staff talked about was they understand the plan is very long. not as many people are going to sit through 230, 240 pages of document. They're working to make it more concise. They are working to reduce the page count. The public comment period is still open. They will have plenty of additional public comment periods on this as it goes through additional review by the planning board up to its current tentative timeline of hoping to get it before the county council in April of 2021. So there's no action to be taken at this time by the council. This is merely an update to the community that Mayor Furman, myself are, a part of these discussions. We're a part of this community or coalition of municipalities and civic associations that are, reviewing this document, and we're working with planning staff and the planning board to help hear our concerns and help maybe get some of those concerns addressed in future revisions to the Thrive 2050 document.
I think what was really unnerving though was Councilmember Joando's just introducing the ZTA kind of out of nowhere. There was no co-sponsor. We spoke to Andrew Friedson. He had no idea that it was coming. It was news to him, and this was brought up at our meeting with Gwen Wright and Casey Anderson, and this was out of left field for them as well. So it makes me wonder whether county council should be able to introduce ZTA amendments just on their own without any sort of consultation with somebody. It just is kind of, I don't know. So I don't know whether that's actually going to go anywhere, but I don't know.
Well, I would just interject that we've had experience with sort of thinking we had a regulatory system in place and then having a zoning text amendment come and upset it.
Right, like with the heights on
right.
MPUs.
That was a long-standing debate leading up to 2012 with the sector plan of what the building heights would be, and we brought them down. And then a couple of years later, we learned that a zoning text amendment went through the council that busted through those limits based on the provision of the affordable units. And at least according to some lawyers involved in it, there was no height limit anymore.
There was no limit at all.
And so that was just a surprise to us. So I think it's smart to pay attention to what the current situation is and what it could become with these CTAs.
Right.
I just wanted to say off of that point, thanks Connor and Tracy for following it. I think it's so important that you guys have been paying attention to this, so thanks for the report out. Just a question about what their response was to you didn't really say what they said in response to the ZTA issue. And then also, are they planning to formally respond to the letter? Will they go kind of comment by comment? There's a lot of stuff in there, right? A lot of good feedback, and I'm wondering what their response will be.
They are taking our 18-page letter as considered public comment. And so they do plan, they're going to build a matrix, and the matrix will be based by topic area, right? So there's a topic area around transit, there's a topic area around housing, there's a topic area around environmental aspects.
Yeah.
Right. And so they will pull our comments out and put them into this matrix based on the topic area that they address. So considering that we generated 18 pages and there are numerous other organizations or individuals that may also be giving public comment, part of what our group is needing to do, we recognize that, is as those comments come out and these matrices are released by planning board, to go through and ensure that all of our comments were captured somewhere in one of these matrices. And if not, the comment period would still be open. They instructed us, if you feel something inadvertently got left out, just to send an email, specifically what was the issue, and they will make sure to get it put in. And then they will go and address every individual comment through this process. So that was their commitment. To your first question, what was their reaction to the ZTA? It was interesting because the ZTA, the news of this ZTA introduction had just happened a day or two before this meeting, and their response was, we had no idea it was coming. There was no coordination or consultation from Councilmember Joando or his office with planning board staff or the commission.
Or the other county council members.
Yeah.
Or the other county council members.
So, their reaction was, these are the kind of issues we really wish we would be engaged on, since we are the planning board. We would have had commentary on it. We would have had thoughts, we would have discussed with them our framework process for building Thrive 2050 and how ideally these kind of things would be worked through the master plan. Their discussion was that would be their preference, is that these type of zoning related issues are addressed first through this plan as a framework, and then through individual master and sector plans as they are renewed and refreshed. And that they understand how ZTAs have at least several of the ZTAs around zoning lately, which have been the MPDUs and then the auxiliary dwelling units, the ADUs, are two that have really caused friction in a number of communities. And they are hoping to avoid that, but obviously now are playing catch up to the introduction of this ZTA.
It was actually interesting that Gwen Wright brought up Kensington at least 4 times as an example of a community. I know some people will argue it's not walkable, but you literally are 15 minutes walk to everything in the town, all sorts of, services, amenities. If we went to Silver Creek, we'd be 15 minutes from our middle school. If, Kensington Elementary School was still our elementary school, we'd be 15 minutes from our elementary school. So it was just, that's an example. We're an example of what they want to create in other neighborhoods where people can have that walkability, probably with better sidewalks but that's part of the vision for Thrive 2050. So, the Pike and Roses, where, you are there with all your amenities within, you don't have to get in your car.
The other thing that was interesting related to traffic and roadways, especially Gwen Wright did bring it up in one of these 4 comments, was they recognized the challenge, that of balancing what their vision is to create these walkable, connected communities, complete communities as they call them. And they really do hold up Kensington as being very close to being there, because we have our town center area and we have shops and restaurants and amenities that, like Mayor Furman just acknowledged. But they also recognize that we also have a 6-lane highway running right through the middle of the town, and that does split the town kind of in 2. In a perfect world, they would love to see fewer cars, fewer trips, fewer need for automobile, and a reduction in lanes. But the balance is they realize that Connecticut Avenue probably isn't a candidate for any sort of lane diet. Other roads maybe, but they also realize that, the way that our infrastructure around us, rail, Rock Creek, other roadways is built, that Connecticut Avenue is going to run through the center of Kensington. It just is. So what I heard though was realizing that even though it needs to be there, it could be improved, right? There could be better green buffers. There could be more treescape. There could be ways to make it a safer pedestrian and biking interchange. To get to Mayor Tracy's point of, it is walkable. It's at times feels unsafe, and I will say I don't like my kids crossing Connecticut Avenue, but if we can improve that and make it safer and make it an easier way to get across that, those couple of state highways, we really are from the north side where I usually am to the west side, going over to the skate park or down to Old Town Market. You really can get most everywhere you want by foot or bike.
Any other questions? Comments? Anyone in the audience have a question regarding Thrive 2050? So at this point, we're just monitoring it and waiting for planning to put that matrix together, as Connor said, and we'll continue following it along. And I know a lot of the down county municipalities are watching this very carefully. So Town of Chevy Chase has taken the lead on it, so. Okay, thank you, Connor. All right, so we'll move on to number 3, the police reform legislation. Council, you received a copy of a letter. The mayor of Tacoma Park, Kate Stewart, had passed on this letter to the mayors and the municipalities asking that we sign on supporting legislation that's going to be happening in Annapolis in January. Senator Smith and Senator Wallstreicher are doing some legislation regarding police reform in Maryland. I sent along some links to look into further in the legislation. So hopefully you had a chance to look at that. So wanted to get the support that we wanted to sign on to that letter. So any comments from the council?
I have some questions. Have we gotten any input from any of our officers or the FOP or anybody on the other side of this?
No, not from the officers that work for the county, no. That work for us through the county.
Or any kind of like implications as how this would impact other areas of the code or?
No, I mean, we have not specifically asked them. We're supporting the legislation. It's in support of the legislation that Jeff and Will Smith are putting together. But I see your point.
Yeah.
You're just asking. Yeah. No, I understand. And I think that is a question that Darren had as well regarding especially Montgomery County Police, who we feel, has done a good job. I think part of this is it isn't a reaction to the George Floyd. And I think the holding people accountable. So. Darren, Connor?
I had a couple of questions too. So I was just curious if we've gotten any indication for how our District 18 delegation is supporting this or not. I mean,
well, Jeff Wallstreicher is our senator, just so.
No, I know, but it wasn't addressed to Senator Wallstreicher, and it actually just said, if you read the wording of it, to get the support of Senator Smith and to, I guess, encourage Senator Wallstreicher, who's co-chair. I was just curious if there's, what the support is at that level. But I think, and I definitely, I do support this, and I think that we should endorse it. But my other question is actually maybe kind of the other side of the spectrum, which is why, the report that we were shared in preparation for the meeting tonight that had the working group, all the 12 recommendations, of which these are 3. My question was, why are we just supporting this legislation and not, for example, the working group's report with all the recommendations? Or is there a reason that there isn't more legislation and it's only these 3? I was just wondering maybe if anyone had more background on that.
I do not have more background on it. It is a letter that Kate had circulated amongst the mayors. And unless we want to rewrite the letter to include those items, that we were asked to support this particular letter.
Okay.
I have one other question. So I don't know if this is like an ethics committee issue, but like basically every adult man on one side of my family is an officer. So I think I might be a little too conflicted to represent the town the way I think it should be. So I just want to put that, full disclosure.
Okay. Okay.
Hi.
I mean, I don't think that's an ethics issue, but okay. Elaine,
I'd rather say more than not enough.
That's fine. Elaine, let me finish with the council and then I'll open it up to the public. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just here from the here supporting everybody and from the Kensington Racial Justice Committee. So we had thoughts specifically on this. So
yes, no, I will get to you. Let me just get through Connor and Darren and then I'll open it up.
okay.
Darren, do you have any comments?
Sure. I mean, a couple sort of observations. I looked at the letter. I looked at the links that you sent around. There's a little bit of a disconnect, I think, from the. I think the letter could be improved But I understand that these group projects don't really lend themselves to editing text. For example, the work group report talks in terms of permitting force that is objectively reasonable. And the letter puts that in terms of making a prohibition on force unless it is absolutely necessary. And this is a much more strict standard. And I think a lot of us would have concerns about wanting to send police to jail based on a review using that heightened standard. I think it could have consequences on police staffing and coverage that we might not anticipate. I guess another point that came out was this idea that we should be subjecting police to the same standards as other government employees. And I get that the news focuses on police and the shootings. I mean, they're compelling, they're disturbing. I sort of feel though, and this, again, it's not a project for the letter, but police officers have qualified immunity. Judges and prosecutors have absolute immunity. And so you can have a prosecutor who sits on exculpatory evidence. You can have a judge that makes erroneous rulings, and they're absolutely immune. So I think as we consider reforming criminal justice, we might want to wonder why we're focusing on just one aspect of it. The other, near the end of the letter, it talks about officers have to be trained and required to warn and de-escalate. I don't think anybody would have any quibble with that. But I would say that when I see the various body cam recordings or video recordings of Montgomery County police officers, I've been impressed by their exceptional training and professionalism and respect. So I in some ways, what I would like, well, let me step back. I don't want to make the perfect the enemy of the good. This is a good letter. I think it could be better. So I'm not suggesting we don't sign it, but I guess my request would be that in the transmittal of it, I'd like to recognize that the Montgomery County Police have been at the forefront of reform, have been at the forefront of professionalism and training, and that to the extent that their best practices can be brought into statewide reform, I would support that.
Okay.
The other, I guess I hesitate to put it in these terms, but we here in Kensington are approaching this from a position of privilege, as the term has been used. We are in a safe, low crime area. If we subject police to heightened risk of criminal penalties for errors, their hesitancy to go into a situation probably won't occur at our expense, but rather it will impact people living in less affluent areas. And so reform efforts that lead to early retirements or resignation or difficulty staffing a shift won't impact us. It'll impact people who are in less safe areas. So I just want to proceed cautiously. Again, I think the letter's fine, but I do want to be careful about really being too strident in our push for reform. And I really want it to be left to people who are far more educated in this area than I am.
Well, it might not be a bad idea to maybe ask, I have been on Zooms with Senator Smith, but it might be a good idea for us to reach out to Senator Wallstreicher and ask that he come to either a racial justice meeting or racial justice committee meeting, or possibly our next town meeting, and ask him to update us on this legislation. So, Connor, did you have a comment?
No, I mean, I share a number of the same questions that other members have brought up. I mean, I will be the first to admit that when I first read the letter, to other people's points, it's a fine letter. It's a good letter. But it is only talking to us from one side of the lens. I would be interested in hearing from if FOP or any other policing organization with Montgomery County wanted to share their thoughts about some of these reforms. I would like to learn their perspective as well. What is their feeling around this, law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights or the Privacy Act implications? I'd like to hear more about their side of things just to become more educated. I also want to hear from our Racial Justice Committee, which I know is coming up next in a second, because that was the first thing that we did as a community to try and respond to a number of these issues that are going on. And, I would be very interested in just hearing what their thoughts are about these criminal justice reforms, the overall full report, as well as just this letter that is, to Darren's point, is really only addressing 3 out of possibly 12 items. So I just want to sit and listen for a little bit.
Okay. All right, so we'll open it up to the audience. Well, Elaine she came in first. So Elaine, go ahead, and then we'll go to Ann.
That's okay. Ann, you lead us here in the Kensington Racial Justice, and you do a lot. So thank you. I'll go after you.
Okay, Ann, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Elaine, and thank you, Mayor Furman. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. I have been coordinating the Kensington Racial Justice Committee since we started in September. So we've met for almost 3 months now. And for those of you that maybe need a reminder, this group came about in the wake of the George Floyd killing and, the march and the walk, the gathering we had at Town Hall here in Kensington. We all recognize that people felt really motivated to do something. We've all seen the signs that our neighbors put up all over town. And so we came together as a group of neighbors to start to educate ourselves and identify how we could advocate and play a role supporting racial justice. So while we are still in a very early phase of work, which to this point has mostly been a lot of educating and outreach with various community groups ranging from high school students to the Montgomery County Chief Equity Officer to an expert in racial health disparities at Johns Hopkins Medicine. And we haven't, in full disclosure, we haven't had time to have a full discussion around the report and the letter. That said, I echo many of the sentiments from the council members' discussion that it's a fine letter. I would say this is the beginning of a legislative process. I thought it was, in terms of a few of the concerns and questions raised by council members, the fact that the work group that the state legislature convened was bipartisan, that they spent, months studying these issues, that they met with members of the law enforcement community, they met with experts in criminal justice and formulating these recommendations. And if you look at their report, you see that it just says plainly, repeal the law enforcement Bill of Rights. So I think that although this letter is highlighting only 3 of the recommendations that you can read more about in that report, it's an important step. These are 3 policy changes that are necessary to begin, even more of the work to rebuild trust with certain aspects of the law enforcement community. And Maryland is an outlier. If you saw, we're only one of 16 states that has this type of additional protection in place that makes it harder to work through the investigative process, whether that's the Bill of Rights or the Public Information Act restrictions. So I think it would be good for us to do follow up with our state delegation and the members who are actively in conversation around these report recommendations and with the bills that are coming forward. We'd be happy to help facilitate some of those discussions with our members and do it in a way that we make sure that it's open for everyone in the town and on the town calendar and all of that. So I think it's a good move for our community to sign on to this letter. And I think that this will be the beginning of more conversations that we can have around legislation.
Thank you, Anne. Elaine, did you want to add to that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So just a few things that, after reading through this, that I think it would be helpful to be mindful of is, that the reform, the idea of it itself, it does not mean that we don't think that our officers have been doing, a good job. I think it would be helpful to think of it in terms of an opportunity for positive growth for the community, and giving the officers the tools necessary to do that, and not making it so much their burden as a community recognition that we need to have, some more things in place for them as support measures, not only support measures for them, like additional training, but those support measures are also going to double as community support measures. The training that is implemented, it has to be on a schedule. It has to be scheduled training. You can't just do it once every 6 months. It can't just be once and then done. Our military does it well, and that would be a good example to follow. I'm a veteran myself. The military holds itself accountable, and that's a whole other discussion. Some people don't agree with the way that in which it does so, but every soldier, service member, everyone is held accountable. And if you do not follow the rules of engagement, if you do not, if you follow an unlawful order, you go to jail. And there is no reason why we should not hold our civilian police to at least the same standard of education and training and consequence. Now, all of that does not happen without the support to be able to make those decisions. And that's exactly what our military does with training and continued training. So that way, when you find yourself in a court martial, you got yourself there because you didn't follow the rules. And there was plenty of training available. And I think that there's nothing wrong with giving more training, because that would further provide the officers with a greater basis to say, I know that I'm making the right decision in this moment. So, and also the Public Information Act, or the Freedom of Information Act, we may not be able to access, even if they go through with that, we may not be able to access any of that information about the complaints until post adjudication of the complaints, which could be years or never. So that's something also to kind of keep in mind. It may not be, readily available in a timely manner to avert any further, action. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Does anybody else want to make a comment regarding the letter?
Dr. Campbell.
Oh, Joe, do you have a hand up? Sorry, go
I
ahead.
do. Thank you, Mayor Furman. It's really not a comment about the letter, but it's about your suggestion to invite State Senator Waldstreicher to the next council meeting. I think it's a very good idea, and hope the council doesn't lose sight of that. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also really thought that the comments by council members Hill Zayat and Connor Crimmins about seeking comment from the other side of the lens is not a bad idea either. So perhaps a representative from the police contingent in Kensington, or maybe Montgomery County FOP would not be a bad idea either. I think that would be a great idea to hear from the other side of the lens, as it were. And finally, if the council doesn't feel comfortable with the letter, there's nothing barring the council from revising it and writing it the way the council feels fit.
Well, I think a part of, a letter stands out when it's multiple, municipalities. I'm not saying I disagree with you, Joe. I'm just saying that's part of the, it's kind of like with Thrive. The Thrive letter got attention because almost every municipality signed on to it. So that's part of the, it just has more oomph, if you will. So,
Well, this measure probably has such momentum in Annapolis that, you know, a revision of the letter is not going to make much difference. But anyway, it can be revised and reworked to the council's, you know, preference.
right. Okay.
Thanks, Mayor Furman.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Missing hands, okay. Council, so can I get a motion to whether we're going to support the letter?
Tracy, did they say when they are hoping to send this letter, what their time?
By the end of the month.
Okay. So there is not time to do anything in June because they want to have it by the opening of the legislative session?
Correct, correct.
Legislative session starts on what, the 14th?
I don't know the exact date, but Mayor Stewart said they needed it by the end of the month.
I'll make a motion to support your signing the letter as written, with the freedom to write a transmittal letter that raises some of the concerns that we've discussed here.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I'm gonna abstain.
You're abstaining? Okay.
So
All right.
are we still going to invite Senator Waldstreicher to the January meeting now, or?
Let me talk to, I mean, I think it'd be a good idea to have Senator Waldstreicher come. I think it might be more effective at a racial justice committee meeting and then also have a police officer. But let me talk to the racial justice committee and so, because I don't want to, if they're planning on doing it, because it can be an open meeting. But if they don't want to schedule him, we can invite him to the January town meeting for sure. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the Pepco rate filing. And that, I believe, is Councilmember Hill Zayat will be speaking to that issue, and Councilmember Engel. Correct?
Get ready for a show. Here we go.
I hear we're sharing our screen.
We are.
Oh boy.
We have a PowerPoint.
I'm not sure
Whoa.
we've done that. I don't remember.
Classing up this joint.
All right, Abby doesn't want to watch. Sorry, she's moving on.
It's all right, Abby. I won't take it personally.
I know. Somebody came home that she wants to see.
All right. Can you guys see this?
Yeah,
Okay.
you need to do slide though instead of.
I hate that. Do you mind if I leave it? I'm just gonna leave it.
Okay.
All right, so this is the rate case. I'm gonna do my best to summarize 1,650 plus pages into like 12. So stay with me. So basically this is a rate case that's going to decide how and if we replace the streetlights in Kensington and all of Montgomery County. Basically what they want to do, well, let me start with what a rate case is, right? This is the formal process conducted by the utility regulator. So in this case in Maryland, the PSC. To ensure that the rates that we pay are reasonable and just. This is a regulated monopoly that we give a private entity, and so there's some strict regulations around it. The process starts with the utility company filing an application. They submit testimony from various experts on pricing and operations. Excuse me. The application will include the total cost to serve customers, the justification, and why the current rates are no longer sufficient. Basically, the utility is there to defend its life and say why they're charging what they're charging. It's kind of a pivotal and important part for us because this is when the municipalities can have the best chance of getting what they want. The utility is particularly vulnerable at this point. Excuse me. what, the specifics of this rate case is Pepco is trying to change all of our high pressure sodium lights, the old fashioned lights, into LEDs. LEDs have certain benefits, especially to Pepco. They don't have to maintain them as often. The bulbs will last longer, the lights will last longer, and it's all around cheaper. So what they're proposing to do is fold the cost of new lights into the rate increase. So instead of doing what Chevy Chase View did, which is pay for the cost up front, we have no rate change for the first year, and the next 2 years it goes up. They save by 4.4%, or on average $5.50. That might not be exactly true. So what they're doing, from what I can tell in these numbers, is assuming that we get the cheapest, ugliest lights. I don't know that most people in this town want those big, ugly, cheap lights. So I suspect that this number is somewhat low compared to what's actually going to happen. Previously, when Pepco would come in and change a light, we didn't have to pay the cost of operating it, managing it, throughout the course of its life. What we would do is pay for the cost upfront of the light, and Pepco would pay for the labor and materials. That is no longer the case. What they're suggesting is that we are going to pay for materials, labor, and operating it over the course of this multi-year plan. So they're saying that the benefits to this are that they're going to improve the infrastructure. So instead of just being lights that they come out and maintain, they're saying they're going to have the power to dim the lights, to detect gunshots, which I don't know that we need that. They're saying that there'll be more remote maintenance, which avoids what they call truck rolls, which is when the truck has to come out and physically touch the light, and that they can schedule on and off times. Some of this, I think there's some privacy issues involved with this. I don't know how they're detecting gunshots. I don't know how they're determining whether to dim a light or turn it off. There's a lot of questions here that they just don't answer. And like I said, Pepco is inclined to put in whatever's cheapest and easiest for them. And that usually is a Cobra headlight. That's what you can see on most of Connecticut Ave, those big, ugly, bent gray lights. So, they also want to put in LEDs, which sounds like very exciting. I'm a big lefty right here, but some of these lights have a downside, especially the ones that they're proposing to put in. They're called a type 5 or a type 3. They are incredibly bright. And I'll get into that more in a couple slides. They're also being charged with installing some electric vehicle charging stations. This is part of a performance improvement metric that they're subject to. They don't want to do this. It's a money suck for them, but they have to. They're trying to say that, oh, well, we shouldn't be subject to this performance improvement plan that you then, award us little gifts for. We don't want to have to do this, but according to this tariff, they would have to put in some electric charging stations, which I think would be good for us. And as a reason to advocate and to sort of intervene and say what we want here, in addition to saying what kind of lights we want. It was interesting to me as I was going through the first 500 pages of this filing that, they make a big deal of saying how they put in these charging stations, but if you look, there's only 24 charging stations in all of Montgomery County with 118 total plugs. So there's a station with multiple places per car, but there are 25,000 electric vehicles in Montgomery County. So if we're using this as a metric of how Pepco is performing, I think they're getting a D. If you look also at this map, so this is where all the charging stations are. So God help you if you have a leaf and you live on the Eastern Shore, because there's nowhere publicly for you to charge. Anyway, that was kind of off topic, but I thought it was interesting. Anyway, so the other reason to intervene in this are the streetlights. There's various options that they're giving us. So they say to put in new streetlights that are LED. Nate, bless his heart, walked all over this town with me to take pictures of our existing streetlights and some of the ones in Chevy Chase View. The ones that you're seeing now, these are the Cobra headlights that we're talking about. Don't look at the bracket. The bracket is the arm that comes off the pole. Just look at the light. That's a Cobra headlight. Those are cheap and easy. Most of these are what you see along Connecticut Ave. However, there's also this very pretty teardrop light. This is in Chevy Chase View. They kind of had a roll in the mud with Pepco to get these, but they're very pretty. And I like these. The next would be these Colonial Deluxe lights. These are relatively cheap, and I think a little bit nicer than some of the other offerings. Here is a dusk to dawn lamp. These are super bright usually, and I think even uglier than the Cobra headlights, but another option we're being given. These are the pretty fancy, very expensive ones. I think you can see some of these, the pedestrian ones along, Nate, what is it, Armory?
No, Howard, I think has them.
Howard, sorry. Yeah, so you can see those there. We have some of them. These are another option, floodlights. Again, pretty abrasive. Mongoose, get the picture. Shoebox, and I think this picture is particularly relevant. So these are lights you typically see in a parking lot with a lot of crime. They're really bright, think like stadium-esque. Some of these lights I stole from the Delmarva website. They're owned by the same company, Exelon. When you're looking at these lights, the other thing to consider is not just the structure of the light itself, but the light it emits. And if you go through town at night, you can see there's kind of a mismatch of lights that we have right now. So this is Chevy Chase View, the light on Cleveland and Summit, and this is what it looks like at night. It's kind of yellowy. This is what is it, a vapor light, Nate?
That's close enough, I think.
Yeah. It's either HPS or a vapor light. They look yellow, and as they age, they turn kind of reddish orange. But this is probably a clearer picture. The one on the left isn't a HPS. It's sort of like a calmer, like softer light. And if you look at the LEDs, they're nowadays much brighter. And the example I was given was that it looks like the face of the moon. It's very bright. And it's worth noting that the offerings that we have from Pepco are 3 and 5, which are the brightest lights. So, keep in mind, this is what could be potentially right into your front window. The colors on here look kind of greenish, but when you're there in real life, they're really more whitish blue. It's kind of hard to take a picture of that without kind of futzing with it. And then you see the HPS again is kind of yellow and sprays a little bit more. So if you look at an LED, they tend to go like that. The HPS is sort of like a halo. You can dim it though. So these are some of the benefits and detractions, I guess. The HPS, while it's softer and prettier, can make it hard for people to see color at night, which some folks want. It's, like I said, orange yellow, and it ages and turns red. LED produces a very bright bluish white glow. The newer products, which are not available now, but probably will be at the end of this term, are a little bit better. They produce a softer glow. They're not as abrasive, which will kind of motivate us, I think, if we decide to do what I think we might, to kind of push to be at the back of the line for all of this, so we can get some of the better, newer equipment. So if you look at this picture, this is along Kensington Parkway, and you can kind of see here, this is a HPS light, so it's yellow, orange, and as you go down the street, it changes very abruptly to LED, so that it becomes kind of that bluish white we were talking about. And it's just inconsistent, kind of, I don't know, abrasive and noisy looking. The brightness, and this is what I was talking about earlier, this would be like a type 5, type 3. These are super bright lights. And I guess Pepco is asking us to just trust them to dim it if we want to, but I don't know about you. I haven't had the best luck getting responses from Pepco. So the idea that we have to trust them to make the light softer is terrifying. The EV charging stations, like I said, this is a performance incentive mechanism that they're not really being held to. But I think this would be a great thing if we could get that in Kensington. It shows that we're, forcing or at least pushing for some renewable and sustainable energy sources. The idea that, we could make it easier for people to come in and shop here, go to a restaurant. If they have an electric vehicle, is always kind of nice, especially if they're coming from further away. You know, our next steps are probably, if we decide to actively participate, is, you know, we probably have to participate in discovery. There's some public comment dates that we can release so that folks in town can have a say, and, you know, start some discussions with other municipalities. And to that end, Nate and I did talk to Jana Co, I think her last name is, at Cities View. They have a very different sort of set of problems, but what is consistent is the idea that if we, you know, sort of try and put ourselves in the back of the line, we have a better range of offerings. So what we could get in, what we can negotiate, not just in price, but in display, would be better. So that's where, Nate, you jump in here. I'm sure I missed a bunch of stuff.
No, I think you did a really good job covering it. Thanks, Bridget. I think the only thing I would add is one point. Well, first to reiterate that I think having intervened in this rate case does exactly what Bridget was saying. I think it buys us some time to negotiate and push that back. So we're not like the first in line that get these certain lights forced upon us. So I think that's pretty important. And I also want to say this issue intersects with the pedestrian and bicycling access and safety working group, because one of the recommendations, not to, you know, kind of tip our hand, but we'll be reporting back to the council in February. But one of the recommendations is really to consider, you know, gaps in lighting, in particular with pedestrian level or pedestrian scale street lighting. There are some areas that are just insufficient for that we're identifying. So these issues obviously relate to one another, and I think they should be not, while they are, you know, one could consider them as separate issues. I think they are related. And the only other point the other point to raise is that in our discussions with Jana, she said that Pepco had said that they would at one point make a list of where these lights are around the county, so people could go and kind of like you're touring a Christmas tree lighting.
The worst Christmas tree light show ever.
Drive around and burn all those fossil fuels while doing so. But she was saying that they're trying to push for getting Pepco to do a demonstration site somewhere where they can just see kind of all lined up. I would put on the table that we should offer that for Kensington Parkway. I think it would be a really good place to do it, and it would allow us to be able to choose between different lights or have them kind of all lined up there to see what the different options are.
Half of them are already there too. They have multiple different lights up and down that street. So
yeah, and it's just an idea. We haven't discussed it with them. I think one of the other next steps, Bridget, that we had discussed was maybe after hearing the thoughts of the council and obviously the community, maybe have a conversation with Tammy Watkins from Pepco, who seems to be the point person, just to, you know, have talk about some of these issues.
I have a question. It seems like, I mean, you were kind of pro the lights, the pole lights, which, you know, right now, anyone who comes in, does a construction project and has to replace the street lights, you know, they're required to put in the pole lights. So like Medina will be doing that. And for the larger projects, of course. The problem with the pole lights is the telephone pole will still be there, so we're adding more poles in the right of way. Is that right? So
I tried to stay away from the
negative. What's that?
I think there's like two separate issues there, right? Like I am just focusing on the light. I didn't really get too in the weeds with the poles.
Okay.
So like Chevy Chase View, they needed more poles. They didn't have enough when they were created. Right. And so what they did was petition and put in their own lights. That's not our situation at all. Like we have lights. It's about making sure we get the lights we want and making sure that they're the brightness and color we want. And then also making sure if there isn't a light where we need one, then you can go down the lane of discussing poles. But I think what's more germane to what we're doing right now is, you know, making sure that we don't just let Pepco do what they want to do without saying what we want.
Well, I don't disagree with that. that. I think you will find there are a lot of people that don't like more lighting. I've met those people, so.
Yeah, and I get it. And, you give up your opportunity to see that, if you just let them, run roughshod over you. I mean, if you think of it like your Pepco, you've got thousands and thousands of these lights to put in, like listening to us is a big pain, but it's sort of like, too bad. Like we're here.
Well, I mean, as somebody who lives next to commercial property, I'm well aware of what an LED light can do when it's shining into your house. I mean,
into your house,
they really are awful.
They're
So-
abrasive.
and
And there's
probably-
lots of other options. You don't
Yeah.
just have to pick HPS or LED. All of Chevy Chase View has what's called a vapor light. And even though they're not quite as great as an LED as far as ecologically speaking, they last for years. I mean, years and years and years, almost as long as an LED, and the color is nicer, they're cheaper to maintain. I just think that there's, Pepco's going to slide a menu in front of you and say, here's what you can have. And what you can actually do is say, no, I want peanut butter and jelly. Like you can say something totally different.
But also the LED lights are, I think are obviously the preference, but there are softer versions of those than the ones that they're putting in, and some that might be appropriate
Right.
for Connecticut Avenue, but maybe not for,
For-
Fairview. So,
For a street-
Exactly.
Yeah, for
yeah,
a residential street where you really don't, I mean, you want light, but you really don't want daylight.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Connor and Darren, do you have questions or?
A couple. So if you were to pick a light right now, Bridget and Nate, based on, everything you comb through, what is your recommendation of the fixture and the actual type of bulb?
do you want me to take it?
I don't know if I agree on your choice, but you go first.
I think we're wholly unqualified to make that recommendation, because it is, to me, it seems like we don't even know what they look like lined up next to one another. That's the point in the first place. And each of those lights, again, is probably site specific, or at least you could probably demarcate the town into several different categories where certain lights would be appropriate. I would imagine we'd probably want more of the decorative fixtures. You see in Garrett Park, you see this in Chevy Chase View, where it's kind of that antique-y looking. I'm just guessing that's what our town residents would want, but I think that question should also be put to the residents, right? So my personal preference would be to have one of the decorative lights with LEDs, but I'm not sure which one, 2, 3, or 4, or 5, or what have you, because there are a lot of different options out there that we just need to be able to see what they look like.
I also feel like there's a sort of vacuum of information. The idea that we just rely on Pepco to tell us how bright something is or how appropriate something is makes me a little nervous, and flat out, I'm out of my element. I understand rate cases to a certain extent because I worked for a supplier, but I never had to be actively involved in them. So, at some point, we definitely need to get some help with this. And I think if we are smart about it, if we find somebody who can say, if you're paying for not just operation and management of these lights in your increased rate, then you should have some choice over what kind of light you're getting, and knowing how much those lights cost and what they can do, what they can't do would be helpful. Cognizant of the fact that, there's most definitely, money is tight right now. And so, balancing that out, finding someone who can be cognizant of the cost restrictions that we definitely should put on them, but also getting the information we need.
And I wondered, correct me if I'm wrong, because I was working off of one understanding, which was part of this process that Pepco is going through is that they're being, I don't want to say forced, but they're trying to upgrade their system from all of these older HPS lights to LEDs because of the cost efficiencies, the lower level of maintenance, they last longer, all of those positives that you asserted in the PowerPoint. But it left me with the belief before you guys went through this that we don't have that much choice, that we are actually have to go toward LEDs.
No.
Why,
No.
other than the softness of light, do you have a breakdown? Like, what's the cost per kilowatt of each of these types of lights?
So there is many graphs in this tariff, which I can, or with the filings that I can send to you. My answer to that will change depending on where it is, what type, what kind of fixture. You're talking about like 32 different options. Or just talking about the fixture, not even talking about the type of light. So all of that will change a lot. If you go through the attachments from the email you got, you can go through, or if it's not on there, I can send it to you. There's tons of information on that.
So, and it's hard. So real quick, Connor, just to give you a sense, and again, the Chevy Chase View situation is very different from ours, just in terms of the scope, the way they kind of went about implementing it. And honestly, what we understand, the deal they were able to negotiate with Pepco, because they did it 17 years ago. But Jenna told us today that they saved, they had to install 50% more lighting, and over the years they've saved 50% cost. So I think it can have a huge cost savings, but it all depends on what that rate is going to be for Pepco to maintain it and what's tied into that. And
I mean, they're charging us to maintain it. They used to maintain it, but they're really, the cost to maintain is being folded into our operating costs now. So
even though the cost of maintenance is very low, they want to be able to maintain the service level. So they are jacking up the maintenance rate to be able to stay in business, I guess.
Then the only other comment that I thought was interesting is some of these other PIM type incentives that could be negotiated through or having standing in this case. You mentioned electronic EV charging station, which, long term, I think having one, say, at Town Hall would be great. It's a public parking lot, but also it opens up our ability to start considering electric vehicles for our future fleet where it makes sense. I know the county runs or did run until it tapped out of funds an EV charging station pilot to get more. There's actually a lot more within the county, but they're all private, private garages, things like that. But that would be interesting. Then my last comment is to the other things that they can tack onto these. You mentioned gunshot monitoring. Are these things that, who decides what gets added to which lights?
Pepco. I mean, so Pepco is just letting us know, here's what we're trying to do. What I am sort of curious about is, give me detail. They just sort of give you word salad as they answer their own questions, and they never really get into the detail of any of that. And so, part of what I assume Discovery is going to show us is like, give me the details. In 1,600 pages, I feel like I get zero answers. Why? I want to know exactly, how are you detecting gunshots? How are you avoiding bringing trucks out to fix the lights? Does that mean you're just not going to fix the lights? Because 20 years ago, 15 years ago, that's what Chevy Chase View said you were doing. You were just not replacing the bulbs. So these are all questions that I think they're not answering that I would like to get some answers to.
Right, and that was my question on the gunshot. So I would presume they're probably going to use ShotSpotter, which is a nationally known company. And DoD uses them too. It triangulates sound. I won't get into the boring aspects of how it works, but I understand how it could be added to this. My question is, how do they decide, right? Is it MCPD that makes the decision with county council? Is it based on crime data? Is it based on they make money with every single one that they put in, so they're incentivized to just throw them wherever? And what happens if we didn't get one, but in time we wanted to be included in that network of, because it has to work off of a network of microphones to create a triangulation pattern. How do we as a council or a community, try and opt into that network?
Or what if you want to opt out? The privacy concerns to me, the chance of someone shooting me on a morning walk as I go down the street in Kensington is fairly low, but the idea that a microphone is around picking up sound is also unattractive. I mean, I'm assuming I can't pick up my conversation, but I don't know that given the information that was provided to me in
Right.
these filings. I just want more information.
Yep. Then, I mean, one, I applaud you guys. As nerdy as the PowerPoint is, it was really helpful. So thanks for taking the time to put it together. But the other thing that I remember from time in DC, because DC was flipping over a lot of the HPS to early LEDs, and the conversation became twofold. One, oh my gosh, there's all of a sudden light on sidewalks. Thank you, public safety wise, I feel great. Oh wait, then I went home and tried to go to bed, and there was light shining through my entire house. And we've already had it here. They weren't Pepco lights. They were security lights on commercial buildings in town where, you know, a couple of us engaged with the resident after the building manager did what they thought was a good thing. They upgraded their lights. They provided more light over their parking lot. They thought they were creating a safer environment, but didn't realize that that light was now reaching farther and had a greater intensity when it got to it, and it was right next to a residential property. And this was off of Farragut. And that, to Nate, your point, whether it's Kensington Parkway or if we have another strip, I mean, Metropolitan Avenue, somewhere where Pepco can put up all these different types of lights and get a sense of it. I don't want to upset any of the residential homeowners on Kensington Parkway, but in a way, that's a good litmus test, is how obtrusive is some of the light, / how much light is it providing over the public sidewalk areas, that trade-off, because it will be a trade-off. So, all right, thanks guys.
Darren, do you have any comments?
No, not really. I mean, I guess the only question is the rate case is for 3 years in duration. And so if we want to be at the back of the line as far as implementing things to learn, you know, do we have a chance to go through this all over again in 3 years?
The 3 years is not about, I don't think that addresses the installation. The 3 years is the pricing. So you would have 2 years of your regular pricing and then, or sorry, 1 year of regular pricing, and then the second year, your rate is going to go up. So if your house is using 800 kilowatt hours on average a month, and and you get some outdoor light or whatever, it would be like a Cobra head, then there would be a $5 increase per month. But that assumes you're doing everything the way that Pepco wants you to do it.
All I'm getting out of this is Pepco seems like to be a disreputable company, and we shouldn't get.
No, they're a company. You know what I mean? Like they're a company like anybody else, right? Or any other company. They want to do things.
No, that's not what I'm getting out of this.
Well, I think they need to be treated sort of with exceptional scrutiny because they're given a monopoly. You know, this is not a government utility in the traditional sense. And so if I sound harsh, it's because I'm sort of terrified, you know, of giving them that much power. And the idea that they would withhold the information that I quite frankly think we're entitled to gets my Irish up a lot.
And they are still, I mean, as far as maintenance, we're responsible, but we have to use their people. Is that correct?
That's right. And, you know, before this was something that they paid an upfront cost for, but now it's us paying it.
Because I mean, I know the pole lights, we use our, the ones on Howard, we use our own company. And I know Safeway manages the lights around their property and they use a company. And
That's right.
I think Capital One has them and they use a company. And so Pepco is not involved with those at all.
That's right. And the cost to maintain your own pole is significantly less. And so the example of Chevy Chase View is interesting to me, where they said, you know, please give us the cost of these poles so that we can buy them from you and maintain them. And what they did was not give them the cost of the actual pole, but the opportunity cost. So the money that they're losing because you're buying the pole from them, they wrapped into the price of the pole. You know
how many poles they have actually in the town? I mean, on residential streets, not Connecticut Avenue. Personally, I think that was a waste of money, but
Chevy Chase View.
Chevy Chase View.
They originally, I think she told us it was 50, and then they went up to, what was it? 70, I wrote it down.
75 total, I think, if they had to add 50.
Okay,
These are the ones that are on their residential street, and
yes,
they're on their own pole, or they're on a telephone?
They're on mostly the Pepco poles.
mostly Pepco.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
No, I can't find it. It's not, whatever.
That's
There,
all
I'll
right,
find
but,
it.
but
Yeah.
it's significantly less than probably what we would need.
Yeah, I don't think they're a great, they're not really a good example for us. They had a
Okay.
different situation.
Okay.
One other question I had, you mentioned the next steps would to be actively engaged in this rate case are going to be possibly discovery, and do we have an idea of what is the cost to the town as far as obviously getting Sue Ellen engaged?
Sue Ellen won't do this. As far as what she said to me, this is not her
Yeah, it's not
wheelhouse.
her expertise. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then we'll have to go out and find Energy Council.
Yeah, I mean, I know a bunch. I can list options. I think what's probably more helpful would be to have somebody who could say, like, here's the best time to ask for this. Like, my desire to know how Pepco is gonna, monitor gunshots aside is probably not as useful or important as being able to say, I want this type of light for this purpose. That to me is probably much more helpful to our town, and
Yeah, and Jana also, sorry, Bridget, to interrupt you.
that's okay.
Jana also said they benefited greatly from their leading consultant, and I think that's another thing that we would suggest pursuing, because I mean, some of these technical issues, to get advice on them, I think would be a wise decision.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to want to put the wrong light in the wrong location.
Exactly.
That would be a nightmare.
One of many.
Yeah. Do you know, did other municipalities, do you know if Chevy Chase Section 5, did they also get?
I didn't see them on the service list, but I can check for you.
Okay, because I know Andy Harney was very interested, they were interested in buying their lights. So I don't know if she was.
I mean, there's an obvious cost savings if you can put the upfront money there. But it assumes that Pepco plays ball, which they don't tend to want to do.
Well, or you think you're getting one thing and they give you some cheap head or something that you end up, people
Yeah.
are.
So the example of Chevy Chase View is they sent them a list of options. Chevy Chase View said, great, we want teardrop. And they said, no, just kidding. We didn't mean to send that to you. And they're like,
Right.
what? So then they got their town attorney to send a letter and, kicked up a little dust, and then they got what they were initially offered.
Yeah, I think that should be a given. That
Right? Yeah.
All right, well, just, for the audience, we've made no commitment to this. This is something that we're just looking into, and by filing reserves the right to be able to be at the table. Is that correct?
Exactly.
All right, does anyone from the audience have a question on this topic? Jack?
Yes, thank you. I agree with much of what's said. Talking about the brightness, you can have too much of a good thing. Actually, from a point of view of pedestrian safety, look at the studies. Some of the examples you had was really bright, but it sort of makes a small circle. And if you're a pedestrian, you're walking, you go from being really bright, and your pupils contract, and then you get past the light, and your place really dark, and you have no good night vision. It's better to have a softer light and have it more widely dispersed. Secondly, as an astronomer, it's really important to try to preserve dark skies, to not radiate light upward. That's wasted energy. It only illuminates the underside of birds. So some of those street lights you showed have a shield so that the light only projects down, and some of them don't. You could see, like the example of that parking lot. There was a tremendous amount of light going up.
Right.
That money is wasted. It doesn't do you any good, and it costs money. And you know, it causes light pollution, which makes it harder for all of us to see the stars
Okay.
and meteor showers and things.
And it's ugly.
Huh?
Sorry. Does LED lights, do they bounce off and push up like some lights would do, or?
I think some of that is going to be determined by the actual casing around the light, you know, so if there's a tamper on it, that will shoot the light downward. But like, I think, and I could be wrong, I'm not an engineer, but like at work, if the plants are using LED, the light, we tend to need more lights because it doesn't spray out. It just goes straight
Okay.
down.
It just goes straight down. Okay.
Yeah.
But it doesn't bounce. It just radiates straight out.
Yeah.
Well, I know focusing the 7-Eleven there at Metropolitan put a light over their building, and when you're coming down Concord, it literally looked like the sun was rising over the 7-Eleven, and we had them push it down because it blinded you.
Yeah.
And they were trying to push the light out to get to the, you know, as much as the parking lot as they possibly could get.
That's a litigation thing, I think.
Yeah,
But
well,
you don't
they
want it to go
did.
up. You want it to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they
you
refocused
want a
it.
shield
but
or a
it-
reflector on it so that the light is all directed out and down.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, Jack. Did you have anything else, or are you good?
That's good.
Okay, thank you. Joe, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Furman. I thought the presentation was really good, and the slides, I didn't think they were nerdy at all. But more substantively, what is the idea about a demonstration along Kensington Parkway? Would this be a temporary thing, or would this be more or less permanent? And I'd like a little more detail about that, please.
We were thinking of putting it right in front of your house. No, I'm just kidding. So it would be.
That would be nerdy.
Yeah. So it would be temporary as far as I understand. And then it would just be sort of like a swatch. So you could see the different kinds of lights, the colors, the brightness, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it would be my understanding would be temporary. And also, just to reiterate, this has not been discussed or approved by Pepco. We would have to reach out to Tammy and just see if they're even receptive to it. But the idea would just be put that temporary swath of lighting to see what.
Well, if you just went past Littledale, they could keep them up as long as they wanted. So that would be good.
I was wondering if there's another street in town that might also be a good place for a demonstration.
I think Connor volunteered
Metropolitan.
Metropolitan, so.
Well, he doesn't live there. He's now a South Sider.
2 more months, Joe.
Well, Metropolitan is a state road, so I'm not sure how much we'd have on that, but
Bummer.
yeah, maybe Pliers Mill over on the, it wouldn't get involved with residential where the firehouse is on that side, on the west side of Pliers Mill. That might be a good location because it wouldn't bother any residents.
Right. And there are a lot of residents along Kensington Parkway.
Right. And in case Pepco's temporary becomes years,
Never.
I
That is my
wouldn't put
question.
it past it.
As long as it's truly temporary, as you guys go out to do this, that was my point of it. Kensington Parkway, somewhere with residential it will be an inconvenience, but we need that data point. We need to hear from people whether it's too much light, right? Whether
That is the benefit of having it in town.
right, whether it's height, angle, type 3 to type 5, so long as it isn't something that, oh, well, our temporary is 2 years, right? It would be helpful if those residents can help inform us of, this is just far too bright of a light or too intense of a light, or where they're located on the height of the pole is too obtrusive to a second floor, bedroom location. Because those were the things I remember hearing. Tacoma Park was another one. There's a bunch of Washington Post stories where they got rid of their HPS lights, they put in LEDs, and all of a sudden people were like, I can't sleep at night.
Yeah.
Again, though, temporary is
Yes, cannot stress it enough.
Totally
state of
fair
art.
point. Totally fair.
And I think, obviously, I think you will keep the residents along Kensington Parkway in mind about this idea, this demonstration.
We're not married to the location. I think the idea is more, can we get them to show us what they have in mind? You know, the location of that is flexible.
Well, I don't think this is something that's going to happen quickly. Is that correct? I mean,
So interesting point. So a lot of times what we're hearing is that Pepco will drag its feet, and then all of a sudden, overnight, literally overnight, they'll install all the lights so that you don't have a chance to complain or do anything about it. And they did that in a couple towns around here.
You're not making them sound any nicer, Bridget.
What's that?
I said you're not making them sound any nicer.
I haven't lied once. This is just how it is.
but when you say they drag their feet, I mean, we're talking about at least a year, right? It seems
I can send you the dates. There's like a list of when we have to submit, you know, our questions, when we have to do certain filings, when public comment is due. So there's a lot of dates. So it seems like a long time, but there's a lot of activity happening in that time.
okay, but we probably won't be seeing any sort of demonstration anytime soon.
Not unless we talk to them.
All right.
Hey, Matt, can I just have you, because you and I talked briefly a while back. I was under the impression that Pepco had sent us some kind of offer or I don't know, some communication with respect to streetlights, and we've been asking for it for a decade.
Yeah,
and I just want. Sorry, go ahead.
We've been talking with Pepco for a dozen years, probably. The conversation always focused on purchasing the actual light fixture, not the pole, but the actual light fixture, switching it over to an LED light, still buying it through Pepco, and then hiring someone like lighting maintenance out of Gaithersburg to upkeep them. That conversation, we haven't had that for a number of years, and kind of just waited for Pepco to get their act together, and this is what they proposed at this point. So
Okay.
Okay. All right. Is there any other questions from the audience?
Thank you, Mayor Furman.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm not seeing any. David Romeo has posted a link for the Tacoma Parks streetlight update project. So
Their town was given as an example of very bright LED. So
Okay.
If you want to look at that'll probably be the best example of super bright
okay.
LED moon surface.
I don't think we're into super bright here. I'm pretty much
Sure.
here that one.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you'll continue to monitor the situation and bring us information as you have it. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for doing this. Okay, real quick before we go to the town manager and staff. Darren, did you have anything you wanted to bring up otherwise on the council?
You mean traffic committee related,
No,
or
just any,
not anything?
Hear from the council if they have something on their mind.
I don't think I have anything else to add.
Okay, great. Okay. Connor, anything from you?
Just two. One is just to wish a happy Hanukkah to all the members of our community that are celebrating. The other is a reminder to continue to wear masks, continue to be vigilant with COVID. I'm coming to you as a firsthand messenger that myself and my family are all COVID positive. Try as we might. We don't know how one of us got infected. Obviously, it spread through, but let me tell you other reasons why you want to make sure to stay vigilant. One is we will now be in quarantine from the day after Thanksgiving until Christmas Day. I have not seen outside in 3 weeks. It's getting to be a little stir crazy over here with 4 kids and a small backyard, although Matt Weber, if you ever watch this, it's a wonderful rental house. Thank you. I just wish we could get more backyard. So please continue to be vigilant, even with news of the vaccine and other things. But I want to give the silver lining to this, which is a huge heartfelt thank you to this community. The outpouring of support for our family has just been amazing. I mean, we've neighbors far and wide across Kensington who have been wonderful and gracious to volunteer to grab groceries or stuff from CVS, dropping off food, dropping off wonderfully delicious warm loaves of challah bread. So I want to give a very hard, this is just an amazing community. This has been a really hard and trying time with 4 little kids, and we cannot get outside and we can't really go anywhere. And personally, for the 9 days that my wife was knocked off of her feet and isolating and completely ill, it was hard to run a household and a company and participate. And so the strength and support of this community was just amazing. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody.
Well, I'm glad everybody, particularly Casey, is on the mend. I did not realize, I know you and one of your children had got tested positive, but I didn't realize the other 3 had as well. So
It was a moment of time. It became, what was chicken pox in the 80s, right? Eventually it was just, you might as well get it. They're all going to be positive. How soon do you want to be able to exit your house? So we just kept testing, and sure enough, we all
His
got
house is big. His house is one Mr. Yuck sticker.
I contemplated getting out a scarlet letter, right, for COVID and hanging it over the door. But I just assumed people would think it was some sort of Christmas decoration.
well, you left off the fact that you're also homeschooling too, or virtual schooling. That must be fun.
Yeah, that was trying.
Yes.
to say.
Okay. Well, hopefully, I don't think anybody's going to miss 2020. So I know, particularly the Crimmins family.
Our Christmas, countdown calendar for Santa has become a quarantine countdown calendar. So 11 more days to go, in case anybody's wondering.
All right. Well, thank you, Connor. Bridget, anything from you? I'm not sure you could top that. Nate?
No, just wishing Connor and his family the best as they recover. But we had a one thing is that we had a working group meeting for the pedestrian bicycle safety and access working group last Thursday, and we just agreed that we would we would be putting together the report, as I noted earlier during the meeting for next not the next council meeting, but the February meeting, and we'll brief you all on our recommendations. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Look forward to that. I just have a couple of things. As Connor mentioned, the Hanukkah celebration, the 8 Days of Light, has been done online. And I've had the opportunity to participate so far in 4 out of the 5 evenings, and I've really enjoyed it. So I want to thank the Rabbi Adam at Temple Emmanuel and Cantor Lindsay for running the event, and look forward to the rest of the evenings. So, and also we ran I found my holiday gifts ad campaign to help our businesses, particularly our retail businesses, survive in the year of COVID. And I had the opportunity to go around to one of their evenings. They'll be open this Thursday till 7 o'clock. Not all the businesses, but a number of them on Howard Avenue and over at the Metropolitan Shopping Center. And they're pretty positive. I mean, they have every reason to be negative, but I'm very pleased that the community has come out to support them. So shop local for your needs. We want to make sure when we do get out of this that all the great businesses that we have worked so hard to have here manage to stay in business and can thrive again. So the community has really done a nice job, and the business owners are very much appreciative of what the community has done to support them as well as the town. So we do have a new business that's opening, I think tomorrow. The Deli Club, which replaced the Tea Room, I believe is opening tomorrow. And so I hope people will have an opportunity to get their carry out from them as well. So anyway, so let's move on. I didn't miss anybody, I don't think. Okay, so let's go down from the town manager and the staff. Matt?
Sure. So we have a couple items for the council's direction this evening. Sorry, the clock. You should have received the council should have received an email earlier this afternoon. We have a resident in the town that installed a lattice on their property. Lattice is classified as landscaping per Montgomery County zoning. They have connected the lattice. It is 12 feet high. And we had a request from a neighboring resident to possibly consider regulating screening or lattices or fence-like structures or accessory structures. At this time, our code does not define them, and neither does the county. You should receive the picture as well of the property. So we're just looking for direction on if the council wants us to proceed with language or clarification from the town attorney on whether this is an ordinance that we'd like to include.
Council, anyone want to start?
So just to clarify, if the lattice were 20 feet tall and, subject to being blown over in the wind, there's no regulation at the county level for how tall that can be or how close to the property line it can be?
Yeah, so we talked with the county inspector about it. It was difficult to get an answer out of them. And they decided that it was going to be landscaping. They were not going to classify it as an accessory structure. They definitely weren't going to classify it as a fence. They're connecting panels. I'm looking at is if it's not at least a fence. I wasn't sure why they weren't classifying it as a accessory structure, which would also change the setback. An accessory structure would require a minimum of a 5-yard side yard setback, as opposed to being allowed to be put right inside the property line. These are things that we need to discuss with the town attorney, but it was unclear to me why it wasn't at least considered an accessory structure at the height that it is at 12 feet. And the county did not provide a clear answer.
Well, and especially when it went beyond the front plane of the house too, that became an issue too, because we, passed an ordinance recently that no fence could be above 4 feet without a variance. So
I just bought a piece of privacy lattice, and the holes on that are tiny. I could see through regular fencing better than I can see through this, and I just
That's what I was going to say.
Hate to think that there's no ability to, keep this from blocking views of intersections. And I think, at least fencing has some structure that keeps it safely in place. This just seems like any backyard mechanic can put it up and be completely free of any sort of zoning code.
My other concern, Matt, the county and thereby our fence regulations, when lattice is included at the top of a fence, it is included within the height and the zoning parameters for fencing, right? Lattice is considered fencing when it's attached to a barricade fence. I don't understand why it should be permitted if it's just lattice entirely on its own, not be considered fencing when it's in fact being used as fencing. And then to Darren and others' points, as soon as it comes into the front plane, yeah, I think it should be regulated.
So, I'm sorry, any of the other, Nate, do you have any comments that you want to make?
No, I just wanted to know, just so I'm understanding correctly, for this particular case that sparked it, it would, if we would pass an ordinance to classify it as fencing, then it would require this person to remove it from their property.
No, once it's up, it's not removable. We can't go back. So this is just, now we've learned that lattice does not fall under fencing with the county, and we don't address it at all in our own ordinance. That's why we're asking if we want to, or why Matt's asking, do we want to now address it now that we see that there's a problem?
It would not be retroactive. We couldn't place a moratorium or anything on that. It's there.
Okay.
Now, if they went to replace it down the road and we had a regulation against it, we might have a little more ability to regulate it, at least going beyond the front plane. But again, what confused me about this and this whole conversation with the county is why it was not if they weren't going to classify it as fencing, how could they not classify it as an accessory structure with the height? Which again would change the setback completely on the location.
Yeah, I don't get why it's not considered fencing. The fact that the material of it, I think, should be immaterial, right? They include lattice specifically in their fencing ordinance when it's considered to be decorative at the top. That goes into the height count, right? But whether the fencing material is plastic or wood or slated or picket or lattice, I don't understand why it matters that it's lattice vice pickets.
The only thing I could figure out is that they were classifying it as a landscaping material as opposed to a straight fence, Again, we had a difficult time getting a clarification from the county zoning on this. So that's why we're asking the council if they want the town to, because we're allowed to have regulations more strict than the county zoning.
And I think what they're going at is, typically on a lattice, you're attaching a vine to it. You're attaching, this particular resident is attaching bamboo to the lattice. So it becomes part of the landscaping plan. It's not, and there doesn't look to be an intention of continuing on. It looks like it's in her landscaping plan. So, so I think that's where the county is, but you can take lattice and make a fence out of it. You can. So.
Are we limiting our thoughts here to lattice as fencing as opposed to, you drive by some houses and the hedges are 20 feet tall. And I don't know how much we want to get into that aspect of dividing
I don't think
property.
we want to get into live plants. I'm not sure.
So it's because it's a man-made material that.
Well, I think particularly when you're going past the front plane of the house at that height, that's why we got rid of 6-foot fences. The 6-foot fences that were put up, as Matt said, we can't go back now. So they're allowed to keep their 6-foot fence because at the time the county allowed them to do it and we didn't address it.
You think it would be easier to persuade county staff to change their interpretation than to enact our own regulation?
It's possible. I can bring this to Jeff Science at the county and see if maybe he has a different interpretation than staff.
I would like that because and take them a piece of this privacy lattice because it's kind of silly that is not fencing material, and when people are using it as fencing on property lines, and it just seems like it's something that ought to be subject to regulation. If for no other reason, then this doesn't look like it's something that's going to withstand the next strong wind, and that could hurt somebody.
Okay. Does anyone from the audience the residents have a question or want to address this?
Kendall's got his hand raised.
Kendall?
No video.
Yeah, Kendall, I see you now.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, just a brief comment. I appreciate you addressing this issue. So I just wanted to add that this particular lattice work, Darren makes a great point, Councilmember Bartram. When the wind kicks up, it is attached to the east side. I'm just trying to get my orientation. Right on the edge of the property, like literally it's on the line. And when the wind blows from the west to the east, it's flexing the lattice work probably about a foot across the line. And it wouldn't take much more than a 50 mile, 60 mile an hour gust, it would rip right off of there. But yeah, I'll reserve and also I would just like to echo as well, city manager comments about accessory structure. I'm also baffled as why that's not a structure. And finally, I would just say, you know, on the opposite side of our neighbor's property, she's erected a similar length 12-foot lattice work in the back part of her yard, running about 20 feet long. And I would not be appreciative of something similar being erected running along the fence that is on our property line that's 12 feet high, acting like a fence, but not technically considered a fence. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendall. Anyone else have a comment? Okay, I don't see anyone else. So it sounds like from the council, we want to go ahead and maybe have Matt reach out to Mr. Zion and see if we can get some more information, but otherwise we want to try to figure out a way to address this. Is that correct? Have some more information? Am I
Yep.
here?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
agreed.
All right, great. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Matt, you had something else?
Sure. The second item, you received an elevation and a site plan for a proposed new home on the north side of town. The architect and developer are purchasing an existing home. They plan to raise the property and build a new home. Within the new home, they are proposing to install a number of bay windows on both the east and west side of the property. What struck the town staff was the bay windows were going to run from the foundation to the second story of the house, which is something new that we've seen. We don't have a ton of homes built in the town, but we've never seen this before. The other thing that we were a little concerned about was the number of bay windows that they had. Currently, the county zoning regulations allow what they're referred to as encroachments. Sometimes we'll call projections of bay windows into the setback up to 50% of the house. So for example, if the length of your house was 50 feet, you could essentially have bay windows 25 feet. And, you know, we think this violates the spirit of the projection within the town. It essentially allows you to, you know, increase the size of your home while projecting into the side yard setback and your neighbors. So we kind of want some direction on whether this is something the council would like us to address, maybe say instead of 50%, you know, do we want to discuss another number? Do we want to limit the number of bay windows? Get clarification on whether foundations can have bay windows. I mean, this one project, they have a bay window on the garage, which we've never seen before. And it struck us, the county is approving site plans like this in other areas of the county. However, the county has a 10-yard side yard setback and we have an 8-foot. So I don't think it has come to a variance with the county yet, to my understanding. So for example, if you're building this in a non-incorporated area of the county and they have a 10-foot side yard setback, you could do something like this without possibly having a variance. But with our 8-foot, obviously, it creates a situation that I don't think our side yard setbacks were ever intended to incur.
Council?
I'm for it.
Okay.
What's that?
Go for it, Matt.
Yeah, we spoke with our building inspector as well. As far as our understanding of the county, the county approved this plan. And there's nothing that says, because we adopted the county's encroachments, there's nothing that would stop the town from approving this specific project. But I'm not, you know, we just need direction on if this is something that we want to address for the future.
Well, I've lived in the town long enough to be looking at Jack over this one. I remember when the house was built next to his with the the roof the roof coming into the encroachments and the gutters. And that was when we moved from not allowing no encroachments to being in line with the county approach to encroachments. And it seems like either through architectural standards or whatever, they've really pushed the limit to the point where now we have to reconsider that.
I don't understand though that if it's part of the foundation, why it doesn't count. That I've never understood. I mean, I understand if the bay window is hanging out there, like I have a bay window in my dining room, but it doesn't give me more square footage as far as walking space. It's just more of a shelf space, if you will, or sill is wider to put something on, but otherwise it doesn't. So I don't, I mean, it's just a way of making the house bigger.
The county allows a foundation for a bay window. But if you put it in the foundation, it's increasing the livable space within the basement of the foundation of the home, the first floor and the second floor in this case.
Yeah, I mean, that to me, when you attach it to the foundation, that's part of the house. It's not encroachment. It's part of the.
It's in bad faith. That's like an obvious
Yeah,
workaround.
okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the same way I look at it is, if the fact that it's in the foundation doesn't mean it's a bay window. Your foundation is as wide as this thing is set. And I'm trying to read their plans, and I cannot find, all the measurements going deep into the property are there, but the width seems to be strategically left off these schematics, Matt.
What shows a side yard of 10.17 inches to not into the main house, not to the encroachment. It's, if you look at the upper left side of the picture.
That's what I'm trying to find. Okay. But what is it to that encroachment then?
What's like 3 feet less, isn't it, Matt?
But
Yeah,
it's-
so a bay window may encroach 3 feet according to the county zoning regulation. So you're probably looking at, 7 feet there, a little slightly more than 7 feet.
Yeah, I mean, personally, by taking it all the way to the foundation, the edge of that foundation to me is the edge of your property, of the building. It's not an encroachment any longer, because it's not like an overhang that's overhanging the foundation line and what would be normally the setback line. This isn't overhanging. This is just built out wider. And it's built from the foundation all the way up. That, whatever the widest part of the structure is what the setback line should be.
And that was my point. I mean, I understand like the overhanging of the roof. I understand the overhanging of a bay window that's just, put in there, but it doesn't increase your square footage of your house.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think the foundation of this house is in violation of our setbacks. Now, if they, I guess, so what? They could ask for a variance, right? But just as far as like approving this, I don't see it as a bay window and it as an encroachment. I see it as it just doesn't conform.
Okay.
That's my personal take.
Well, and Matt, do you happen to recall when we opted in, and I use this term loosely, opted into the county approach to encroachments, because, we were having debates whether gutters could stick in, whether flagpoles could stick into the setbacks. Did we put that in our code somewhere? Because I agree with Connor. If we have a 10-yard side setback and half of it can go to 7 feet, then we no longer have a 10-foot side yard setback. We have
7 foot.
So we
7 or an average.
we never defined our projections or our encroachments. So we follow the county zoning regulations. So any bay window, any front porch, stoop, steps, anything like that defers to the county zoning. There's nothing that says that we can't set our own standards, or we could take, just bay windows and, limit them to a certain extent. But We have not approved this permit yet. We'll definitely take it to the town attorney and have her review it before we proceed with the permit. And if she says a variance is necessary, then we'll go that route. So
Well, so if I'm just pulling up the code right now, and I guess we'll let the legal counsel for the town do this, but I mean, it still says
Real legal counsel.
exactly, not the pretend. Unless a variance is granted in accordance with the section, no dwelling or any part or projection thereof erected on land shall approach nearer than 10 feet. So I understand that we may have just, kind of adopted, but I don't see that the county system, but I don't know that we actually, incorporated that into our code. And so if we want to go back to the view that this is a projection into the 10-foot side yard setback, it may buy us enough time to sort of figure out, what we want to do on this.
okay.
But run it by Sue Ellen, because
Matt, do you know if either of the neighbors on either side of the house are aware?
I do not know. If there was a variance, they would be notified, and they would be provided with the public hearing information if a variance is determined to be required.
Yeah.
Right, and it's also not in the historic district, so they.
No. But I'm looking at on Google Earth, and I just bring it up because the home to the east, both of the homes are oriented to the middle with the driveways on respectively on their outsides. So they've got, this home in particular to its west has much more space from the home that's next door to it. But the house on the east does not. And that's where, this selection of bay windows, there's a large set of, it's where the foundation is pressing closest to the property line. So I just wasn't curious. I was curious if any communication had been done with the homeowners on either side of this property.
So we do have a requirement that doesn't allow a dwelling unit to be closer than 15 feet. Again, we don't have the final DPS plans for this yet, but my understanding from speaking with the architect is that they are not closer than 15 feet to either property on the east or the west.
It's gonna be pretty
But
close.
again, we do not have the approved DPS plan yet, so.
Right. Yeah, I mean, to the properties west, I think that's probably fair. To properties east, I think it's gonna be pretty close.
Okay.
But, okay.
Okay, good. All right, any other questions about this? Anyone from the audience have a question? Jack?
Yes, thank you. To clarify, I think some of the things were said, perhaps we misspoken. The Montgomery County requires a side setback of a minimum of 8 feet, and the sum of the two must be at least 18 feet. The town of Kensington requires 10 feet on each side. And the Kensington Code says no part of projection may be located closer than 10 feet to the side property line. To follow up what Darren said, it wasn't the builder next door to me put the foundation wall at 10 feet. Of course, the roof and gutter overhung into it. And he built a 3-foot wide, quote, window well, which was actually a basement exit or entrance. And that stuck 3 feet into the side setback. I think now, especially in the time of bigger houses, it is important for us to maintain the side setback.
I don't think we disagree with that at all.
And it should be nothing projects into that side setback from the foundation to the sky, to the top of the building.
Are you,
Unless you get a variance.
okay, are you talking about the overhang of a roof as well, or you're just talking?
Yes, for example, or a window well, or even a bay window would require a variance if it projects into the 10-foot side setback.
Okay.
And certainly the large bay windows they're talking about that extend the foundation closer than 10 feet. That, I think that clearly violates the code.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Anyone else? Okay. So it sounds like we're asking you to go back and talk to Sue Ellen about it. Okay. Okay. But I think if for some reason that we don't address this issue, I think it sounds like we're going to want to address it for future development. So to make sure that we've got it covered. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. So we are down to, Susan, did you have anything? No? Yeah.
No.
No? Okay. And Matt, I'm sorry, and you're done? You have any?
One quick note. So we're going to introduce the charter resolution this evening for the town elections. The town attorney has asked us, there's a corresponding ordinance that will clean up some language in the actual town code. I just wanted to reference it on the agenda. That will be introduced in January. And that will also require a public hearing and notification. But that will be introduced in January. The charter resolution will be introduced in a minute, probably.
Yes.
So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so public appearances. Anyone have something they would like to? Oh, Jack.
Thank you. Astronomically speaking, there are a number of interesting things that are happening this month. Actually, tonight is the peak of the Gemini meteor shower, which too bad it's cloudy, but this continues for about a week.
No, you could only see that in South America. We can see it here?
No. That was the solar eclipse.
Oh, bummer.
The meteor shower happen all over the earth.
Awesome.
What is happening is the Earth is passing through the orbit of the comet, which gave off dust and gas and things, which now intersects the Earth's atmosphere. They say it's best observed between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. The winter solstice is the 21st at about 6 o'clock, and also on the same day, just coincidentally, there will be a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. That means the two planets will appear to be almost right on top of each other. Yeah, a tenth of a degree. Sort
Right.
of a seventh of the width of the moon. If you look each night, it gets closer and closer.
Okay, so they're the two bright lights that are close together on top of each other, right? Is that what I'm
Yeah,
looking
and
for?
they're sort of like that, and they're getting closer, and
Okay,
they're getting closer and closer.
okay, because
this
I
is
was
some-
looking for them last night, but I didn't see them. So
Okay,
is it too early?
They're in the southwest. It's pretty low. You need to get some elevation. I live on a street with trees.
Yeah,
Oh.
I don't think I had a good
And-
location.
It's so in the southwest, about an hour after sunset.
Okay. Yeah, I was in a location with too many street lights. It was too bright.
Yes. Another reason why dark skies are better. We don't need to illuminate the sky.
Are they going to hit each other?
What?
Are the planets going to hit each other?
No.
Sorry.
No, I mean,
Just kidding, Jack.
2020's almost over, Darren. It's not gonna
Yeah.
happen.
Jupiter is about 5 astronomical units from the sun, and Saturn is about 10. That's 10, 5 and 10 times the Earth-Sun distance. And it just appear that way because you're seeing it in 2D instead of in 3D. the night of the 21st into the morning of the 22nd will be the Ursian meteor shower. So, and January night, January 2 and the morning of January 3 will be the Quadranians meteor shower. So there's a lot of stuff happening. Hopefully we'll get some clear skies.
Okay, so we possibly could see those around here?
Yeah,
Jack, I
Okay.
have a question. Is there ever a month that does not have a meteor shower?
sure.
Yeah, which one?
I would have to look, but
I'm
Well,
just so
these are major meteor showers. I mean,
Huh,
you get a few meteors all the time.
yeah. Thank you.
These are little particles of dust or sort of solid material, sort of, the size of a grain of sand, a grain of sand or a grain of rice or something like that. It's not,
Hmm.
they burn up in the atmosphere and don't hit the ground.
Okay. Anything else? Good.
Not tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Joe, I think I see your hand up.
Yes, you do, Mayor Furman. Thank you very much. Kudos to the town crew for their fine work on the leaf collection that ended, I think, on the 11th of December. But they did fine work and were very responsive, and Matt deserves credit too for that, for their responsiveness, I think. Just a question: is there any, with a potential storm, winter storm looming for Wednesday? Is there any town parking ban on town streets in advance of a winter storm? I don't think there is, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to pose that question.
We have not made any official bans. I think a lot of streets, I know on Warner Street, which is around the corner from me, they all make the choice of parking on one side to make it easier. Darren, you're on a narrow street. Do you do that over there?
We we mobilize, and if we have extra driveway space, we offer it to people. We just get as many cars off the road as possible, but there's no formal system for it.
Matt, did you have, where'd Matt go?
So there's no town ordinance of any kind that prohibits parking during a winter storm?
No, we don't have those winter storm signs that say, during a storm emergency, you can't park on a street.
I don't have a driveway, Joe.
Thank you, Mayor Furman.
You're welcome. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, doesn't look like we do. Okay, so we're going to move down to ordinances, resolutions, and regulations. Matt?
We're going to introduce the charter resolution. I'm not going to read the entire title.
That's a good idea. It's 9:34.
Yes, introduction of a charter resolution of the mayor and council of the town of Kensington, amending Article 7, registration, nominations, and election of the town charter. This is with regards to the amendments we're planning to make for a town election. Councilmember Bartram and Councilmember Engel have worked together on this and provided recommendations, and this is the resolution for your consideration.
Okay, and that the entire resolution is on the website, is that correct? Okay, and they did work with our town attorney, Sue Ellen Ferguson, so so we are introducing that this evening. We will have the hearing next month on January 11th, and then we will probably keep the record open till it's usually the week before this is the Friday before the town meeting.
Correct.
In February, where we will vote on the resolution, on the charter resolution. So we're not talking about it tonight. We are just simply introducing it. Okay.
We'll need to set the public hearing.
Okay, so if I can get a motion to set the public hearing for January 11th.
I move that we set the public hearing for Charter Resolution CR-01-2020 for Monday, January 11th, 2021 at 7 p.m.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Matt?
Okay, ordinance number O-03-2020 is an introduction of an ordinance of the mayor and town council to amend Chapter 8, Health and Environmental Regulations by enacting in Article 9, Pesticides, to incorporate Chapter 33B of the Montgomery County Code entitled Pesticides, which contains various provisions to protect the health of the public and to make conforming changes. As you remember, we've had Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection at 2 separate council meetings this year to discuss the pesticide ordinance in the county. And this would be the ordinance that would officially adopt Chapter 33B and allow Montgomery County to enforce the pesticide regulations within the corporate limits of the town.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, this is just the introduction. We're not going to speak tonight on the ordinance. The hearing will be in January. And then we will keep the record open till the Friday before the February meeting, where we will vote on whether we're going to adopt the ordinance. So if I can get a motion to set the public hearing for January 11th.
I move that we set the public hearing for ordinance number O-03-2020 for Monday, January 11th, 2021 at 7 p.m.
Okay, is there a second? Is that Bridget, was that you? Okay,
Yep.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we've come to the end of our meeting tonight. I don't know about everybody else, but this is I believe my last meeting for 2020. Kind of happy about that. I want to wish everyone a rest of happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and any other type of celebration that you may have, a Happy New Year's, and look forward to a new beginning in 2021. So Jack, go ahead.
Answers to Nate. I guess look, Google meteor showers. The first month without one that I saw is February 2021.
Very
Thank
good.
you. And I know I could have probably Googled it, but since
You
we
just
have
Google
the
it
expert,
and you will get some each month.
yeah.
It's
Well,
amazing the things you can Google these days.
Yeah.
thank you, Jack.
You're welcome.
All right, so we need a motion to adjourn our last meeting in 2020.
Motion to adjourn our last meeting of 2020.
Is there a second?
Second.
That was Nate. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you all. And I know I'll see you before the new year, but enjoy the rest of your evening.
Take care, everybody.
All
Thanks.
right, bye-bye. Thank you.